The lake was still, its surface a mirror for the fading sky. Soft pinks and purples bled into the water, interrupted only by the occasional ripple from a fish kissing the surface. The air smelled of pine and damp earth, cool against the skin. At the edge of the lake stood a small cabin, its weathered wood glowing faintly in the dusk. A single lantern hung from the porch, casting a warm golden circle onto the grass below. Inside, Clara sat at a wooden table, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea that had long gone cold. Clara was 42, with lines around her eyes that told of laughter and worry in equal measure. Her dark hair was pulled into a loose bun, strands falling free as she stared out the window. She'd come to the cabin to escape the noise of her life, the endless emails, the expectations that clung to her like damp clothes. She'd told her co-workers she needed a week to recharge, but the truth was heavier. Clara felt lost, like a boat drifting without an anchor. Her days blurred together, each one a repeat of the last, and she couldn't remember the last time she'd felt truly alive. The cabin belonged to her late father, a place he'd retreat to when the world grew too loud. Clara hadn't been here in years, not since she was a girl. She remembered running through the tall grass, her father's voice calling her back for supper. Now, the silence of the place was both comforting and heavy, like a blanket too thick for summer. She'd arrived that morning, her car crunching along the gravel path, and spent the day unpacking, tidying, avoiding the real reason she was here. She needed to find herself again, but she didn't know where to start. The problem was simple, yet it felt insurmountable. Clara's life was good on paper: a steady job as an accountant, a small apartment in the city, friends who texted her memes on weekends. But inside, she felt hollow, like a tree eaten away by termites. She'd spent years doing what was expected, checking boxes: college, career, savings account. Yet, at night, when the world was quiet, a question gnawed at her: is this all there is? She'd hoped the cabin would hold answers, but so far, it only held memories. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Clara stood, her chair scraping softly against the floor. She pulled on a sweater and stepped onto the porch, the lantern's light flickering in the breeze. The lake was darker now, a deep indigo that seemed to swallow sound. She closed her eyes, letting the quiet settle into her bones. A loon called somewhere in the distance, its cry lonely but beautiful. Clara opened her eyes and noticed something: a faint glow on the far side of the lake, bobbing gently on the water. It was too steady to be a reflection, too small to be a boat. Curiosity tugged at her, soft but insistent. She grabbed the lantern and walked down to the dock, her footsteps muffled by the grass. The old rowboat was still there, tied to a post, its paint chipped but sturdy. Clara hesitated. It was late, and the idea of rowing across the lake felt reckless. But the glow called to her, a mystery in a world that had felt too predictable for too long. She untied the boat, set the lantern at her feet, and pushed off, the oars dipping into the water with a gentle splash. The lake was calm, the only sound the creak of the oars and the soft lap of water against the boat. Clara rowed slowly, her breath visible in the cool air. The glow grew clearer as she approached a small glass bottle, floating upright, with a tiny light inside, like a firefly wrapped in amber. She reached out, her fingers brushing the cold glass, and pulled it into the boat. The bottle was old, its surface scratched, sealed with a cork. Inside, the light pulsed faintly, not electric but something softer, almost alive. Clara's heart quickened. She glanced around, half expecting someone to appear, but the lake was empty, the shore dark. She tucked the bottle under her arm and rowed back, the lantern's light swaying with each stroke. Back at the cabin, she set the bottle on the table and studied it. The light inside flickered like a candle, but there was no flame, no battery. She hesitated, then gently pulled the cork. It came free with a soft pop, and the light spilled out, not bright but warm, filling the room with a golden haze. A piece of paper was curled inside the bottle. Clara unfolded it, her hands trembling. The handwriting was familiar, slanted and precisely her father's. The note was short, written in faded ink. Clara, my star, if you're reading this, you've found my lantern. I hid it on the lake, knowing you'd come when you needed it most. Life can feel heavy, but you're stronger than you know. Follow the light, and you'll find your way. Love, Dad. Tears pricked Clara's eyes. Her father had died 5 years ago, A sudden heart attack that left her reeling. She hadn't known about any lantern, any note. How had he known she'd come here, feeling so lost? The light in the bottle pulsed again, and Clara felt a gentle twist in her chest, like a door creaking open. This was no ordinary light, it was a message, a gift from her father, left for a moment he'd known she'd face. She sat back, the note in her hands, and let the tears fall. The light seemed to wrap around her, warm like a hug. Memories flooded back of her father teaching her to fish, his laughter as they skipped stones, his quiet voice saying, "You're enough, Clara, just as you are." She'd forgotten those words, buried them under years of routine and doubt. The light in the bottle felt like his presence, steady and unwavering. The next morning, Clara woke to sunlight streaming through the cabin's windows. The bottle sat on the table, its light dimmer now, as if it had done its job. She felt different and not fixed, but lighter, like a weight had shifted. She spent the day walking the lake's edge, noticing things she'd missed before, the way the reeds swayed, the chatter of birds, the smell of wildflowers. She thought about her father's note, about following the light. It wasn't a map or a clear answer, but it was a reminder to trust herself, to seek what made her feel alive. That afternoon, Clara found an old sketchbook in the cabin's attic, one she'd used as a teenager. The pages were filled with drawings of the lake, the trees, the stars. She'd loved drawing once, spending hours capturing the world in pencil and charcoal. Somewhere along the way, she'd stopped, convinced it was a childish hobby, not practical for an adult life. She flipped through the pages, her fingers tracing the lines. The sketches were good, not perfect, but full of heart. She took the sketchbook to the porch and started drawing the lake. Her hands were rusty, the lines shaky, but it felt good, like stretching after a long sleep. The act of creating, of putting pencil to paper, stirred something in her. It wasn't about being the best or making money, it was about feeling alive, about seeing the world through her own eyes. The light from the bottle had guided her here, to this moment, to a piece of herself she'd forgotten. Over the next few days, Clara fell into a rhythm. Mornings were for walking, afternoons for sketching, evenings for sitting by the lake, the lantern glowing beside her. She didn't have all the answers, but the hollowness was fading, replaced by a quiet spark. She thought about her life back in the city, her job, her routines. Some things would stay, but others could change. Maybe she'd take an art class, or cut back her hours, or spend more time with people who made her laugh. The future felt less like a trap and more like a canvas, waiting for her to draw on it. On her last night at the cabin, Clara took the boat out again. The lake was a sheet of glass, reflecting a sky full of stars. She held the bottle, its light now faint but still there. She didn't need to keep it, it had done what it was meant to. She set it back in the water, watching it float away, a tiny beacon in the dark. "Thank you, Dad," she whispered, her voice steady. She rowed back, the lantern lighting her way, feeling not just found, but whole. As she packed her car the next morning, Clara looked at the cabin one last time. It was still her father's place, but now it was hers too, a refuge, a reminder. She drove away with the sketchbook on the passenger seat, a small smile on her lips. The road ahead was long, but it didn't feel heavy anymore. She'd found her light, and she'd carry it with her, wherever she went.